Namaste. We were speaking of yesterday of the way Indian civilization looked at the human march. Human march was not just about outer development, buildings, technology, systems, etc., but primarily an inner march. It is a march, a battle, and a pilgrimage. So it's a march which is forward march towards a great goal that the rishis had foreseen. That great goal was not just amassing wealth, having material comforts, having a name and fame in society, but something much greater. It was first to discover the truth which is at the core of all things. Satya Dharmaya. So, and to live by that law of truth. Second, and thirdly, to manifest and express that truth in life and thought and feeling and speech and action. This was the great goal that the rishis placed before us. So much different, so much uplifting, so much sublime and beautiful than all the possible goals that we can imagine. So, to find the truth which is at the core of things through yoga, to live by the law of truth. We see in Yagnavalk in the Isha Upanishad, speaking of that, Hiranmayena patrena satya syapahitam mukham tattvam pushanna pavranu satya dharmaya drishte. Meaning thereby that all our rules, laws that we make, social, religious and otherwise, are temporary contrivances and devices. Whether it be a legal system, a judiciary system, or the social codes of conduct, they are temporary devices. They are necessary when we are in ignorance. But there is a law of truth. By law, it's not do this and don't do this. By law of truth is simply that this truth is unfolding through creation. And for that, there is a way, there is a path that which it unfolds in creation, and we must follow that path. So the Rishi plays, now I want to know the law of truth. And what is the beacon light that we are moving toward that truth? So it gave these three wonderful terms, which incidentally are the first attractions for the psychic being. The sign that the psychic being is getting awake are that it is drawn towards Satyam Shivam Sundaram. Truth, goodness, and beauty. The good of all creatures, not goodness is my good. Good of all creatures. Beauty, beauty in thought, speech, action, feeling, willing. Satyam, what is the truth behind appearances? So, this was the path through which they moved toward the great ascension to the home of truth. The home of truth is a place which is full of rasa, delight, samanjasya, harmony, beauty, Tripur Sundari. That's how they conceive truth, not as a barren, bare, kadwa, such. All this is our own ideas and viewpoints and opinions. Truth is always beautiful. It is beauty taking a different hue altogether. So, this is how they saw this journey. It was a battle because there were forces that help and there were forces that hinder. And it was a pilgrimage because whole life was a pilgrimage towards that great final goal. And that goal is God. But who is this God? So, very beautifully, now, people talk about God as form or formless. In fact, everything in creation is form and formless together. What is the big deal about it? As a child, when you learn physics, you discover everything is form and formless. So, I am a form, I do exist independent of my forms. My thoughts, no need to go into abstraction, my thoughts, feelings, they're all essentially formless. Love has a form. In countless ways it can express itself. Through material care, through service, through expressions. But love also exists independent of all these forms. And the two coexist. In fact, we can say that one is the antecedent cause and the other is which follows it. So one is the essence, the other is manifestation. This is the way Indian thought looked at it. And who is God? So, one way to look at God is that He is the absolute of all that we seek because we are all miniature divinities. Take absolute of good, absolute of love, absolute of truth, and absolute of anything, including absolute of justice, absolute of kindness, absolute of mercy, absolute of wisdom, absolute of peace. So that is God, but not anthropomorphically. Rather, we are that shadows. That's why we reflect in some way or the other like a miniature divinity. And as I said, even in material world, you can see some aspect or the other of his infinity in the most material creation. So there are all these things which are there, but primarily he is Sat, true existence, existence, consciousness, absolute force, and absolute bliss. So these are the four main aspects. So from there, we see another interesting, and of course, there is a beyond which we already spoke about, none can define. So from this very thing comes another very interesting aspect of Indian thought, without which one cannot really, it's mind-boggling, but very fascinating. People often say, "Bahut sare devi devta hai." So who are these gods? The gods and goddesses, both masculine element and feminine energies, are the cosmic managers, if you like. So if the God or being, why is he a being? Why is he a God? He's not a God like a human being with a beard sitting with a carrot and stick. That is surely anthropomorphic. But he's a being in the sense, the moment we say that there is absolute consciousness. Now we are partial consciousness, and I am aware that I am in whatever limited way. Even an animal to an extent has that obscurity of I am. That's why it saves itself. Even plants, touch me not, and all plants, they make certain reactions to preserve their. So this sense of I and that limited consciousness gives a limited sense of I. Very limited. We believe that we are the only conscious fellows on the earth. Therefore we devastate everybody. But everybody has, everything in creation has a little bit of consciousness and a little bit of existence. And therefore, according to the bandwidth of consciousness, I have my own understanding of that I am. Now that, if it is supreme consciousness, won't know that it exists. Will it be without a sense of I or a being? It is a being in that sense that it is supreme consciousness which is aware of itself by itself. We are also aware of ourselves by ourselves. Nobody needs to tell us that you exist. I exist, I know it. How do I know it? Well, I know it by my sort of identity, my consciousness, or whatever. We can go into its operations. But I am conscious that I exist. That's it. So he is also conscious that he exists. He has a right to be conscious that he exists. The moment we say he, it, she, or whatever exists, is conscious of itself, we have to say it's a being. Not being in the sense of a human being, but a being. Now this being can take this form, that form is a later issue altogether. But the divine is a being. So what difference does it make when we say divine is a being? Why not be happy with impersonal, formless? Because if he is impersonal and formless, then we can't relate to him. See, that is something very interesting about Indian thought. But if he is a being, we can relate to him. So we become being of his being. He is the being of our being. I can connect with him in 1,000 ways, million ways. And that is the root of bhakti, that I can connect with him. Why? Because he is a being. If he is an impersonal consciousness, then all that I can do is strive to climb, reach there, do some, gymnastics of different kinds. And that is what Shri Krishna reveals beautifully in the Gita. So, after he is revealing truths to Arjuna, then Arjuna says, "Sir, hold on please. Madhav, I have a little doubt." Raises his hand. So Shri Krishna, "Yes, go ahead." So he says, see, what a dialogue, huh? He's questioning and there are answers. He says, "Madhav, all this is fine. You are making it appear so beautiful, interesting. But what about those fellows who do tapasya? What about them? They do a lot of hard tapasya. You're making it appear so simple. That do nishkam karma, remember me at all times. But they do very tough tapasya. I've heard about tapasvis." So Madhava says, "Yes, Krishna, yes, Arjuna, they too reach to me. They can't go anywhere else. But they take a very, very strenuous, difficult path. At the same time, they reach a very limited aspect, impersonal. They are very happy with that. I don't disturb them in their journey. But the path I am telling you is a complete path. You discover God not only in His impersonality and personality, but is an infinite personality with infinite qualities. That is the vision of the Purushottama. Sharobhav, God is immanent in creation. In everything that is mutable, He is present. Akshara, immutable. It cannot, come down. Akshara. That is the impersonal universality of the divine. But beyond it is the Purushottama. The ultimate, the supreme Purushottama, the Uttama Purusha. So, if you follow the path that I am telling you, you will have a delightful journey. Meaning thereby, we are on the pilgrimage. We are not alone. We are in the battlefield. We are not alone. Who is walking with us? All my friends. The one friend, the original friend, he walks with us. Now just see, this little thing makes a world of difference. And this is not a thought or conception or a dil ke behlane ko khayal. It's not a feeling. Shri Krishna confirmed this is the truth. And those who don't want to follow this truth, even them I am helping. They don't know it, that's all. When Sri Aurobindo was asked that Divine Mother, does she help those who don't believe in us? He says always. Without, even a yogi takes some aspect of his Prakriti and starts the yoga. Where does Prakriti come from? From the Divine Mother. And then he gives a few examples. You see the life of Buddha. The Divine Mother is trying all things. Then the Divine Mother comes as a one Vasini and she thinks he is one God, Devta. Thank God now they have in Bodh Gaya the temple of Sujata. So she comes and tells him, you know what, I can see you are straining yourself too much. Have some kheer. And he has taken a vow, I will not take anything, I'll find God. So she says, dhanush ki dori ko itna mat khicho ki tooti jaye. Itna dhila bhi mat chodo ki tir na chala sako. Don't tighten the bow so much that it snaps. Don't leave it so lax that you cannot even fire the arrow. Buddha has a, sunlight suddenly flashing in his sky. He says, yes, the middle path. See, what is the middle path? The path of balance. The material and the spiritual are not two separate. Balance. And then it seems, as the story goes, Buddha drinks has the kheer. And then he says, kheer, interestingly, is a symbol of knowledge mixed with the sweetness of God. That's why Mata Parvati in Kailash Parvat, if you go there, she will give kheer. And that's why Lord Vishnu's Sagar is called Kheer Sagar. And you have a place called Kheer Sagar, okay, Kheer Bhavani. I love to call it Kheer Bhavani. So, I understand. Its milk is knowledge, and when you add to its sweetness, it becomes kheer. So that's what it is. She gives him, and he has it, and then he says, if this is true, may this leaf go upstream. And it seems the leaf goes upstream. As the story goes, and Buddha has the enlightenment. She comes and goes away. See how the Divine Mother can use anybody and anyone. Now people will say Sujata was this girl. Yes, the Divine Mother has to come in some way or the other. It's not that Sujata was an incarnation of Divine Mother. She used her to convey something to the Buddha. And there was, as an interesting aside, a beautiful relation between the mother and the Buddha. And the Buddha once came to her in one of her visions and says, I know you are carrying in your heart a knowledge which is so rare, so precious. Why are you covering it in a purple cloth, this beautiful diamond? And then he says, I know you are hesitating to give it to the world because the world will may misunderstand you. And then he says something very beautiful. It's documented in Mother's Prayers and Meditation. But when has the world understood the divine? And then he says, even I hesitated before I gave it. And this is very interesting. The conversation starts this way, that I have come to you today, even as you have loved me once. So I have come to you today. And the mother would often tell the hardcore Buddhist, Buddha is love incarnate. But they would not understand. No, no, there is no Buddha. Buddha has gone into nirvana. And she'll say, I'm seeing him there, right with you. Alexandra David Neal. No, 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 it cannot be impossible. Buddha is nirvana, nothingness. So, Buddha, the Divine Mother comes. We see the same thing with of course, Rama and Krishna we know. Jesus Christ, that whole side of Mother Mary is blanked out, except in few cults. And when Mother was asked, and see that story of virgin birth, it's very interesting. Sri Aurobindo summarizes it in one line. Heaven's joys could be earth's if earth was pure enough. Virgin birth. And then about Christ, when Mother was asked, somebody saw a vision in which Christ was playing upon her knees. And she says, yes, he's a baby, child of the Divine Mother. Everywhere in every story, she is there. So Krishna says, anyways, people may not acknowledge, but I walk with you. The Divine is with us. But the beauty of Indian thought is, of course, there is bhakti in Sikhism. It is true. Some kind of a bhakti you find in, of course, bhakti in Christianity, the early mystics, really tremendous. So they could catch it like this, the avatar. So they held on to him, Son of God. He will take us, has become Son of Man, he can take us there. But the way Indian thought has taken bhakti through every possible route, in every possible richness of detail is amazing. So this is because Divine is a being. Therefore we can relate with him, connect with him in every which way. And he loves it to be so. Because this world is made for relating with God and then becoming God. So relating with God is the first step. So Soham Asmi, if we skip that stage of relating with God, Soham Asmi may end up aggrandizing the ego. I am God, so I in this personality is God. But when we go through the path of bhakti, we discover the same thing. That's the story of Kuts and Indra. That after the Devasur Sangram, Indra says, hey Kuts, let's go to Swarg for a few days and let's celebrate the victory. So Kuts says, but Vishwamitra tried to send Trishanku and you will not throw me out of the door. No, don't worry. Let's come and see the magic. So Indra is inviting him to Swarg. He's a mortal. But he's invited. So they have a chit-chat conversation. What's happening? Cosmic conversation. What's happening in Iran? What about the global food crisis? The God way. Not because God sees the inner truth. So they are having conversation. And as they go to the gates of heaven, the Dwarpal who has to open the gate is confused because he sees not one but two Indras. Kuts has grown like Indra in every which way by relating, conversing with him. See, before Swam Asmi, this bhajamyaham, to bhajo, to relate with God, to do his bhajan from the deepest sense, to bhaj is to join, to take delight. Bhag, it comes from that root, to take joy in God. So you become like God. So then they are not sure. If there could be two Indra, maybe both are not real. What to do? So they call Shachi, Indra's consort. So she is Sachi, she is truth consciousness. So she comes and Indra is Sahasraksh, global consciousness. So Sachi comes and says, this is the original Indra. This is because of his love and togetherness and company, he has become like him. Come, both of you, I have wonderful food ready. Come, sit on the dining table, have nice dinner and Somras, which is Ananda, incidentally. So this is the story of we have to become one with God. We can go through the path of tapasya or we can go through the path of surrender. Primarily, these are the two main things. So still, what is tapasya? We hear this often. And by tapasya, we feel something very hard, done with. If you give pain to yourself, it is tapasya. It has nothing to do with tapasya. The last thing the divine wants of us is to mortify ourselves. If he really wanted us to do that, he would not be really worth calling a god. So tapasya is a very logical thing actually. Again we come to that root word tap. Tap. Tapna. It all comes from the same root. Increase the heat within yourself. How to increase the heat? Again, you compress the molecules. Isn't it pure physics? How do you generate heat? Compress the molecules. You have so much all diffuse. Compress it, compress it, compress it. It begins to convert into heat energy by the sheer fact of coming together. This entire whole process is that. So how do you compress any form of energy? Any form of energy, if we concentrate, it is a kind of tapasya. And when we concentrate in a spiritual endeavor towards a spiritual goal, then it becomes truly tapasya. It has nothing to do with when I sit, where I sit, what dress I wear, whether I sleep on the floor with brick under my head. In fact, there's horror. It has nothing to do with that. So concentrate the energy of thought. Instead of letting the thoughts discursively travel in 100, 1,000 direction, concentrate it into God seeking. It becomes tapasya. It could be one idea. It doesn't matter. When Paul Brunton went and asked Raman Maharshi, he had come to ashram also, had mother's darshan, but mother told him, don't write anything about you. He had fantastic experiences. So, In Search of Secret India, very interesting book. So, when he went to Raman Maharshi ashram, he started getting this question from all sides. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? So, what? I can't think of anything except who am I? So he, with great force, threw the question towards Raman Maharshi. Who are you? And then when he looked at him, there was no Raman Maharshi. It was like for a moment, there was absolutely, he couldn't see anything. Who am I? Who am I? So, if we concentrate any thought, Sri Aurobindo gives a line in Savitri, a lonely thought becomes omnipotent. It's that energy. God within or an idea. Then after a while, there is a door which opens. Concentrate the energy of emotions, which is running around. Mera bhaiya, mera munna, mere bagal wale, mere parivar wale, mere photo frame wale, mere aane wale, palne mein khilane wale. Sab ye sab, all these energies of love concentrated in 100 directions. Concentrate it upon the one divine, which can be done in two ways. All this knowledge can be done in two ways. Let's take that also. Mother has mentioned this, Sri Aurobindo has also mentioned. We can concentrate it within on the idea of God within us. We can concentrate on any and every object with the idea of God within. That is integral knowledge. That's why in Gita we have Jnana Vijnana Yoga. So it is not just the self within, but the self in everything. So if we concentrate, the truth of everything begins to yield itself. Because you are looking at things from inside outward. Similarly, loving the divine within, exclusive concentration. The way of traditional bhakti. Exclusive meditation, the way of traditional jnana. And all-inclusive meditation, concentration, the way of integral jnana, knowledge. Exclusive concentration on your personal deity within. That is traditional bhakti. All-inclusive love, where in every one sees or tries to see the divine. It's a very interesting aphorism of Sri Aurobindo. He says, people often say that a woman is a snare for man. He says, I would think more wisely of God that He created them for snare. He says, medieval ascetics used to say that. He says, I would think much more wisely about God and for women also. But this was the way people conceived. And then he says, there are two ways of avoiding. If you call it a snare, then there are two ways to avoid the snare. One is to shun all women. They do it in one of the movements, Swaminarayan movement. Not supposed to look at women. So I had to give a talk once. And there Brahmalin Swamiji was also present. So fortunately they had kept my thing in the last because he had to inaugurate. So women were sitting right behind under shroud of darkness. That's how I came to know. I asked my friend, कि क्या है सब पीछे क्यों बैठे हैं? ये तो बहुत रिग्रेसिव चीज है. नहीं, he is not supposed to look at women. So I started talk like that वैसे तो हम ब्रह्म ज्ञान की बात करते हैं, परंतु ब्रह्म के आधे भाग को तो हमने पीछे कर दिया. I don't know whether they got the punch or not. so, so he says that one is, there's a touch of sarcasm in it. Either is to shun all women, which is impossible. You are born, you have mother, everybody in your life. Or to love all beings. That is the other way, the royal way. In everybody to see the divine. That's what the Gita says. Love all creatures, love all beings. But love not ignorantly, not selfishly, not what men call love. Perceived essentially, I cannot give you what men call love. But love because of the divine presence in them. That is essence. So this is the path of bhakti. So tapasya is when we concentrate this energy. See, tapasya and surrender go together. Similarly, the energy of will dispersed in I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, 100 things. So we have very little energy left. After all that, post-retirement plan, when I am 65, I don't know, nowadays good, there is no retirement age. But after that, I will seek God. It is the same thing like Vajasravas cows, which is offering as a sacrifice to gods. That when they have grown old without milk, what will they, what will the gods do with it? And Nachiketa, the young, youthful, that's when we should offer. So these energies of will which are dispersed in countless directions, if we concentrate it, it is the tapasya of will. Concentrate in where will? Either in offering themselves, dedicating, consecrating all our works to the Master within, and in the world doing his works for the divine consummation of humanity. Here again, Sri Aurobindo is a wonderful aphorism. There are two things perfectly pleasing to God in his servant. One, to clean his temple floors in silent adoration. It could be the temple floor outside, more importantly, temple floor inside. Or to fight the great battle of the future for his divine consummation in humanity. That is also the tapasya of will. So you see, tapasya is concentrated energy. Concentrated upon spiritual endeavor. If you remove the spiritual endeavor, then mothers do tapasya, lot of tapasya. Children do tapasya, padhai mein tapasya. So women do tapasya. You know how it's tremendous tapasya. Ghar mein, bahar mein, everything. Men enjoy the fruits of tapasya. So that's it. No, okay. Men also do tapasya. They have to live away. It's not easy thing, no? Living away, doing all the labor, hard work. It's a tough life. Boj tale, zindagi ke boj tale daba hua aadmi. That's why this line was coming. When we don't do tapasya, nature makes us do tapasya. So zindagi ke boj tale daba hua aadmi, matlab nature is compelling you to do tapasya. To karega nahi, karvaunga. So a whole, you are compressed, and you are doing cheek pukar. So tapasya is about that. And in this tapasya, there is, and this forward march, this pilgrimage, this battle, there are these cosmic forces which help us. They are the gods. They are the managers of cosmic managers. And they are at once physical and psychological. Because in Indian thought, there is a unity of creation. So the same God Agni we ignite as the fire is also the Agni, which is the flame of aspiration towards God, is also the Agni which changes its form and becomes in man the many-tongued desires, is the Agni which urges us to progress, to achieve, to strive. So there are at once, the same Agni has several connotations together. The same God, Vayu, Indra, Vayu expands. So inwardly, the Vayu expands our consciousness. From a narrow state, we enter into vastness. But the same Vayu, in the lower worlds, operates differently. So that man wants to come out of that small little shell and expand his consciousness. In the plant, it gives the idea of, it makes the plant bring out of itself more and more gametes, santan, all this. It's the same Vayu. It expands everything. In the material universe, it expands the universe. So Vayu is Matrishwan, it expands. Agni is Jat Vedas. It is the giver of all births. All things that come into existence start with this Agni. Otherwise, life is very routine and mechanical. So Agni. And then, you do something and then you get some result. So it is the Jat Vedas. It's the original impulsion that starts things. Then there is, who is the other god? Vayu, Agni, Indra must come. So Indra is the divine mind. So at its highest, it's the knowledge of creation in all its different aspects behind all the manifold knowledge. So Indriya is the senses. In lower creation, it becomes Indriya, the gods. The Vayu, Agni you'll see in each of the Indriya, and Indra is the mind. But in its ultimate status, he is the divine mind and the divine senses through which the divine experiences creation. Here we see his diminished form in the ancient. And then there are other gods. So we have Pushan, we have Bhag. Who is Bhag? Nowadays these gods are forgotten. They were the original Vedic gods. So you have Bhag. Who is Bhag? He is the enjoyer. His task is to give you joy. He enjoys life. So, that was another god who comes toward the end. But in Vedic culture, we also have Soma. So, after you have done, Soma is the first god who has gone into creation to pull it out. He is always running as the undercurrent of life. And he is the last god who reveals himself in all its beatitude. When people have gone through all these states, Varuna, Mitra is the god of love, harmony. Varuna is the god of, again, vastness. Then you have the god of war, all these gods, strength. So all these gods at the end, they recover the original delight that has gone into creation. So Soma is delight. And Soma is not what Somras pi karke. Now, this is the gods. They are helping us in creation. But at the same time, they are managers. We can go through them. This was one of the path of the Vedic rishis. They took this path, many of them. This god to that god. It was a very detailed path. If you look at it first, Agni. So Agni they will purify inside. They will light up the flame of aspiration. Make it grow more and more by offering Havi. And Agni's power is consort is Swaha. So when you offer anything, Agni makes it purer, brighter, luminous, makes it grow. When you offer Ghritam, which is the illumined mind, all the mental energies, Ghritam. So it becomes the illumination in the mind, the light of the mind increases manifold. Instead of letting this energy of the mind flit away in different directions. So when you offer different aspects within you, then the gods will give you horses and cows so that you can become a milkman and you can, ride a chariot. This is how we are told. So who are the cows? They are the luminous, they are described actually in the Vedas. Luminous kind of the sun. Now either they have to be crazy that they were saying that cows were born from the sun. Even by any stretch of imagination, this will be fantastic. The straight meaning came from the word go, which is light. So they give us the luminous rays of the sun. Sun is the creator. So all the energies of the creator begin to illumine us in different parts. So they were the goes. And what about us? Yes, we talked about horsepower. So we grow in power and force. So light and force, knowledge and power, this begins to grow in the person who is doing swaha to the gods. But first through Agni, then Vayu. After we have started offering this as a sacrifice, all the activities of our life as samidha, the mental mind's thoughts as the Ghritam, then gradually our consciousness begins to expand. So Agni, then next is Vayu. So after consciousness begins to expand, it changes into cosmic consciousness with all its attendant results. This is the second god they bring. Then the third is Indra. When consciousness becomes vast, then we can really receive the divine knowledge. If consciousness is very small and narrow, even if the highest knowledge is revealed, we'll turn it into a dogma. Small little dogma, a set of do's and don'ts. The last thing God has ever written is a list of do's and don'ts. Otherwise, he himself will be confused about his creation. It's an evolutionary process. So, there is this other aspect that Indra comes, and now we have the all comprehensive understanding of creation. Not the Indra of Purana, I am talking about Indra of the Vedas. And after we have grown into this vastness, purified through Agni, and the divine knowledge has begun to enter us, then comes Soma with his pitcher of delight. कल अमृत की बात हो रही थी. So then we don't have that Prayag wala, wo complicated wala Amrit. Then he directly gives us and we drink that Soma and we are energized. What does Soma do? It is the original power of creation, delight. It doesn't just fill us with delight. It has the property to completely heal, harmonize everything. Joy heals, but provided it is that joy, ultimate joy. So this was the Vedic pantheon, and many other gods, Twastri, who fashions the chariots, the Ribhus, artisans of immortality. That's a different story altogether. But, and there is a very interesting but, it was not necessary to go through the gods only. You could bypass them, they are managers. So we have in the Upanishads complete bypassing of the gods. In fact, they say it's a very difficult, long path. Why you want to take this path? So what is the bypass road? So the bypass road was, they are all aspects of the one Supreme. You connect with the Supreme. How to conceive the Supreme? Okay, he is beyond conception, but you have to have some framework of conception. So he is sometimes called as Hiranyagarbh, in the golden sheath. You conceive of him like that. You can conceive of him as the absolute. You can conceive of him as Om, which is very interesting. It's the Pranav Mantra. And why it is... See, everything was so detailed about Indian thought. It's not just that it is the original Nad which is recreated as Om. This is one part of it. But look at the formation of the word. It has 3 movements and then a 4th combination. Om. That's how it is. Ah. So what happens in A? See how they connected. Sanskrit language. So it's all phonetics. Every contact which can take place between the tongue, the palate and the lips and the sounds is a syllable. You won't find it in any language. So there are labials, there are, gutturals. So all those sounds have been woven into syllables. So is what? Opening. So there is manifestation. Outward going movement. Then O is circumscribing it and bringing it back. Entire story of creation. Outward movement, circumscribing it, bringing it inside. So you have Om. And then Om, which is all comprehending, where all these 3 states are contained within it. So they said that the divine or the Brahman is fourfold. So fourfold means, one, he is the ultimate truth, which absolute, about which nothing can be said, is the supreme. Then out of him, he concentrates himself and becomes pragya, that is that all-powerful intensity of knowledge, that supreme light, if you want to call it, the ultimate splendor and effulgence, pragya, which is described as, okay, we'll talk about that later. Then that out of that supreme state, condition, which is beyond manifestation and unmanifest. So Hiranyagarbh, the author of our dreams, so he picks out certain elements which have not manifested and he says, I must manifest it. So he picks out a selection out of that. And Hiranyagarbh, he is the dreaming god. So he dreams, all kinds of dreams enter into his realm. And then he projects it outward into the outer world, where he becomes Virat. So there are 4 states of consciousness. The waking, which is what we are connected with. Jagrat Avastha, we all know is Virat. That we know. Vast universe, material universe. But behind it is Hiranyagarbh, so Swapnavastha, in which dreams are in the making. Today's dreams are tomorrow's realities. What it means is, be careful of what you dream. Because we may dream and expect something from the dream. Dream will realize, but not necessarily what we are expecting from it. So often people say, chase your dreams, More important is be careful what you dream. No doubt dreams have a tendency to precipitate upon earth. Because that's the logic of creation. Whatever we dream, think, and will, feel, have faith in, we tend to become that. So the yogins would begin to master these inner states. So there is the Jagrat, there is Swapna. Then there is Susupti. मुझे बेखुदी कि तूने बली चासनी चटाई. We don't know what is beyond it. Yet it is in its extreme. It's called Susupti because human consciousness cannot remain awake there. It's such a concentrated, tremendous. It's like being blinded by the light. We can't see anything there. We can't remain awake. When there's too much light, what happens? You just after some time try it. One is when there is darkness, we fall into sleep. Little light disturbs sleep. If there's suddenly a blaze of light, your eyes close and you just want to lie down. That's the susupti. We can't register anything. And beyond these three is turiya, that which transcends all. So everywhere there is Brahman. Even this outer world is Brahman. But you can't understand the outer without understanding the inner. And the inner, the inmost. All of us, human personality also has these 3 or 4 dimensions. There is the outer personality which everybody sees. Very nice person, very bad person, etc. etc. It's a small limited outer person. Jagrat avastha. It's our little Virat. So that's what it is there. It is the outer personality, the outer man. But this is not what we are. There is behind the outer man, the inner man. Sri Aurobindo says is the true person. The inner man, the inner being, where a lot of things are going on inside, trying to press on the surface. And behind it is the inmost, the psychic being. And what is beyond is, of course, the central being sitting with the Paramatma right there. So all of us, this is the fourfold way of creation. All these detailed aspects of life and creation they gave to us. Did they give it only for yogins and in the thought world? No. This details and richness of human life, of creation, we find everywhere in ancient India's this Sanatana Dharma, the way of life that they had developed. Look at literature, the mind of a race. What details! Sometimes it's so amazing. Even right up to Ramcharitmanas, Kalidas. I mean, original innovator of the mobile. Yaksha is, you'll say how? So Yaksha has been, Indra has got very angry. Now this is Indra of the Purana, not that Vedic Indra. So he condemns him to a mountain. You have to go and live there 1 year. So mountains are wonderful except for one little problem. This Yaksha is in love with someone and she is far away. He can't visit her and she can't come. So what does the Yaksha do? No mobiles. So he started releasing the idea of the mobile. It's not a joke. He looks at the clouds. How do the mobile waves travel? Through the sky. He looks at the clouds and says, will you go and convey this message of mine to her? And the clouds are traveling in that direction. So the cloud says, cloud messenger, Meghadutam. So cloud say, but how will I recognize? Then in great richness of details, he describes the city. How will I recognize your beloved? Again, in great details, he explains. If you read it, it's a treatise in just as a Sringaras, where pathos of a kind and ornamental beauty of a kind Shringar is described in what richness of detail. Sri Aurobindo ranks Kalidas as among the top 3 creative geniuses of India: Valmiki, Vyas, and Kalidas. He ranks Kalidas. He is even translated Vikram Urvashi and Abhigyan Shakuntalam, Porsha, Kumar Sambhavam, Birth of the War God, little bit he has done. So these are amazingly rich, even coming down all the way to Ramcharitmanas. Again, look at the creative. I mean, these lines are so, you describe the teeth of the Lord when he is a child. आप ये वर्णन सुनेंगे नहीं कहीं पर. तो अभी दांत कैसे थे राम जी के? मैंने तो ये अपने रैगिंग में ये यूज किया था. दिस शोड मी ए मॉडल एंड जिसके दांत जिसको डिस्क्राइब कर. अब मैं तो ये सब पहली बार ये सब जीवन में हो रहा है, तो मुझे कल ये मैंने रामायण पढ़ी थी तो मैंने रामचरितमानस का वो दोहा बता दिया. वो कहते हैं ये सब क्या है तो मैंने वो जो बताया था दोहा वो सुनाओ आपको. राम जी वो चारों को बालक जब खेल रहे हैं तो तुलसीदास बताते हैं, दम के दतियां द्युति दामिनी ज्यों छवि भूरी अनंग की दूरी करें. दशरथ के बालक चारों सदा, एंड दैट्स हाउ इट गोज द लास्ट बिट है. नाउ लुक एट दम के, यू नो इट इज ग्लोइंग. दतियां teeth. I don't know which toothbrush they used. It would be worth. Dyuti, Damini, like the lightning streaks, like that when they open the mouth. Why is calling them lightning? Because sometimes you open and you see the teeth. Damke, Datiya, Dyuti, Damini jo, छवि भूरी. माने ऐसा रूप जिसको बार बार निहारने का मन करता है. कौन है? अनंग. लुक एट द कंसेप्शन. Kamadev is Anang. He has no form. Shiva did that. He said, if you want to really make me love someone, you have to become formless. I can't have that kind of very personal, domesticated love. I can be in family life, but still you will Anang. That story is very fascinating. Maybe next session we'll talk about it. छवि भूरी अनंग की दूरी करे. कामदेव भी लज्जित हो जाएंगे उससे. जो आप सोचिए ये क्या डिस्क्रिप्शन है. और जब माता सीता और उन्होंने देखा है राम जी को, लव एट फर्स्ट साइट, तो क्या करती हैं? या इट इज डिस्क्राइब लाइक दैट, इज लव एट फर्स्ट साइट. पुष्प वाटिका में तो जाती वहां पर माता पार्वती को और वो प्रे करती हैं. तो फिर वो फूल गिरता है तो बताती हैं, यही भांति गौरी आशीष पुनि पुनि मुदित ही हर्षित चली, तुलसी भवानी पूज पुनि पुनि मुदित मन मंदिर चले. वो देखती कि फूल गिरा तो वो जान जाती कि ये ब्लेसिंग्स है वहाँ से. अब लेकिन विवाह मंडप पे बैठ गए तो अब उस समय मोबाइल ये सब प्रश्न नहीं था. वो राम जी को देखना चाहती हैं. कैसे देखें? तो उन तो घूंघट उड़ा हुआ है. नहीं, राम जी देखना चाहते हैं. राम जी तो मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम है. कैसे देखें उनको? सीता जी ने तो उनको देख लिया है, इन्होंने नहीं देखा है, पर इनको देखना है. तो वो अपने वो जो सीता जी ने अंगूठी पहनी हुई है हीरे की, उसके नग में माता सीता की छवि देखते हैं. जस्ट इमेजिन द रिचनेस ऑफ डिटेल्स. वी डोंट अप्रिशिएट दिस एंड वी गो टू शेक्सपियर ने कहा था, होमर ने कहा था. आई हैव रेड होमर, शेक्सपियर ऑल्सो, बट इट पेल्स बिफोर द रिचनेस ऑफ क्रिएटिव अबंडेंस ऑफ. ये सब बाद में आ गया. माया माया माया, आई डोंट नो. इसीलिए माया ने कहा अब तुम माया माया रटते हो, अब तुम्हें ऐसा बांधोगी कि तुम मुझसे मुक्त नहीं हो सकोगे. पूरी तरह मेटीरियलिस्टिक बन जाओ. तुम बोलते हो ना मुझसे फ्री होना है, बिकॉज ये लॉर्ड की माया है. श्री अरविंद एक जगह कहते हैं, यू कैन गेट रिड ऑफ मोह, नॉट माया. माया इज द लॉर्ड्स माया. इट इज क्रिएटेड फाइनाइटनेस फॉर मैनिफेस्टेशन. मोह यू कैन गेट रिड ऑफ. दैट ignorant attachment you can get rid of. So literature, look at now heart की movement. Now normally we have those, how many, when I read psychology book में उन्होंने कहा 3 प्राइमरी इमोशन होते हैं. अभी तक हम पढ़ाते हैं इंडियन साइकोलॉजी में 3 प्राइमरी इमोशन होते हैं. मैंने कहा भैया नवरस तो पढ़ा दो कम से कम. हर चीज में उन्होंने रस को देखा और किस तरह से वो रस क्या है, ओरिजिनल जो है वो डिलाइट है. इसका है ही नहीं कहीं पर जिक्र. और उस डिलाइट ने 9 फॉर्म्स लिए. उसमें एक फॉर्म तो बड़ा अद्भुत है, विभत्स. अद्भुत इज ऑफ कोर्स वन रस. विभत्स, उसमें भी रस होता है. सी, दुशासन की भुजा उखाड़ी जय जगदीश हरे. सी यू गेट दैट. अरे बड़ा अच्छा हुआ. विभत्स दृश्य है. दुशासन की जब भुजा उखाड़ते हैं भीम, इफ यू रीड इट, या अगर आप एक यूरोपियन माइंड से पढ़ोगे, उफ व्हाट आर दिस शोइंग, यू नो दिस इज नॉट this is tearing his hand and throwing it and taking the blood and taking to Draupadi, and she's putting over her hairs, braiding her hairs with that blood. How gory this is. But look at when you read it in Mahabharata in the total context. Oh Dushasan ki bhujao khadi. Jai Jagdish Hare. You feel that another joy altogether. So there is a rasa in it. When evil is punished, when it is cast aside by an act of bravery, even that becomes a source of joy. So everything, Adbhut, you can't even describe it. The darshan of the divine, Sri Krishna says, Ashcharyavat pashyati kashchidenam. And then love ke kitne shades hain. Matlab, it's amazing. The words itself, there's so many shades of love. हम लोग अभी वो माइंडसेट से आते हैं तो नहीं समझ पाते हैं इस चीज को. And then when you come to from the heart, you come to life. Which aspect of life has not been lifted up to the highest possible and linked and turned into something sacred? I've already spoken about it. From the womb, conception is sacred. So if you read the ancient Indian literature, conception was not a act, चलो बच्चा एक घर में आएगा, अच्छा रहेगा, एक खिलौना आ गया, या बड़ा हो के मेरे बुढ़ापे का सहारा बनेगा, ये सब तो थॉट दूर दूर तक नहीं है. So you have the birth should be, conception should be a conscious conception. So उसके मंत्र हैं, उसके proper processes हैं. As I was saying, even Kam Sutra describes, after about 90% description of the state, how to take a bath, what kind of perfume to use, it's something so detailed. And then the act is only a very small thing. But it's a fusion of personalities, not a physical act. They lift even a physical act to what level? It's a joining of two beings, not just the body. And then you have the conception, then we have garbhadan sanskar. 3 months पर होता है और 7 months पर होता है. So you see, normally that's a period around which the 3 months to 4 months, proper, that beating of the heart, 5 months it begins. And then 7 months when probably there is an ensoulment. Not ensoulment in the sense soul doesn't enter the womb, it waits, but कहते हैं ना गच लेना अच्छा ये वाला इसमें, I'll come. It has not entered the womb. Indian thought knew कि abortion is not bad because if necessary, because if the soul has not yet, soul may enter after 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, even 14 years. So people may, how is the abortion? Not, बेबी शावर होता है. तो फिर वो क्यों वो एबॉर्शन का जो इतना क्रिश्चियन वर्ल्ड में ये सब चल रहा है अभी उसको लेकर के, तो ये तो हमारे यहाँ व्यास ऋषि एडवाइज्ड, ये जो संतान हुआ है इसको मार डालो, प्रॉब्लम होगा. अब इससे अब लगता बड़ा शॉकिंग, भ्रूण हत्या, एम्ब्रियो में बेबी को मारे जा रहे. दिस नॉट टू से दैट यू शुड नाउ check the baby gender and destroy. That was never the case. In fact, it's a male which is coming. He says he's going to be devastating to the world. Save the world, whatever which way. So the action of the yogi was beyond the pale of human right and wrong. And Indian thought understood it. That this boy is going to create devastation upon this earth. This is about the birth of Duryodhana. So he says that, finish him in the womb because he has seen it that Mahabharata war, ये seed यहाँ पर है, ambition का seed डाल दिया इसमें. So this is how they saw it, which is a different paradigm altogether. There are countless distortions when you apply a great truth onto your small little mentality. But we must first understand what it really contained, richness of life. Then the entire journey, Annaprashan, first time put there, Annaprashan sanskar. उसके बाद दवात पूजा, उसमें क्या है आपके पास चीजें रखी. पहला बार बच्चा अक्षर लिखता है तो ए फॉर एप्पल नहीं लिखता है, ओम या कुछ हाथ पकड़ के लिखाते हैं. उसके बाद वो चॉइस ही विल चूज विच वन, तलवार ये सब में उसका स्वधर्म क्या है, उसको ही विल मेक चॉइस. एवरी एस्पेक्ट ऑफ लाइफ वॉज कनेक्टेड विद द डिवाइन. मैरिज, ऐसे नहीं होता था कि चर्च में हम चले गए एंड वी किस ईच अदर एंड से ओके फ्रॉम टुडे वी आर मैन एंड वुमेन डिसाइडेड इन हेवन सफर्ड अपॉन अर्थ फॉर गुड. चॉइस नहीं है. कितने तरह के विवाह हैं. उसमें भी विवाह में यू हैव द फ्लेम इन द सेंटर एंड द 7 times you go. What are those 7 times? Around the mother has explained this so beautifully. She didn't talk of it as explaining the Hindu system, but she said marriages are not necessary, they are dated. So, though it comes under marriage and children, which is not a very correct thing to do. So, people said, mother, but they couldn't understand. It was shocking, 70s. So she said, yes, if people love each other, they can be together. And if they don't love, they can walk away. Because that's the only criteria. Real thing is love. So core of togetherness is love. Now people, obviously in those days to hear such a word, but Divine Mother is saying, says, Aurobindo, the people have taken it now, any which way says, okay, I'll give you what is the secret of lasting union. You will still get, if people get married, they get this card from the ashram. I don't know now they give it or not, but it's there in Mother's Collected Works, volume 14. And she says, to unite your physical life it is a first thing, but it is not enough. Naturally it is important. Then to unite in sensations, it is very good. It is not enough. To unite in your feelings, it is very important, but not enough. I'm compressing, it's a whole page. To unite in thoughts is very important. To share, have the same taste, likes, dislikes, tendencies. It is very, very important. But it is not enough. And then she says, at the center of your being, at the core, at the apex of the world, there is the fire. To unite your lives around this fire, to join your life around this fire, to walk the same path, to the same goal, together, hand in hand, at the same pace. This is the secret of, and then she adds, very interesting, of a lasting union. Temporary unions can be, but lasting union, this is the secret. Now just imagine what a comprehensive formula of thing it was contained in one little ceremony, where 3 times or 4 times man takes the lead and 3 or 4 times woman takes the lead. It was inbuilt. So center में fire है तो फिर नोक झोंक क्यों होगी? Consult from the point of view of that central goal. What is the right thing? Not तूने थोड़ा कुछ तूने कही, थोड़ी कुछ मैंने सुनी, बात बन गई. ऐसे नहीं हो, बन गई बिगड़ भी जाएगी. So बीच में that fire, to keep that fire in the center, that try to resolve the problems based on that and turn toward that. That's actually the core aspect. And of course the core is love. So this is how Indian thought in every sphere of life. Even death, career, job. So everything according to the Swadharma, Grihasthashram, according to Dharma, you are earning wealth. Nothing wrong with that. We didn't say that you should discard materialism. No. It is itself a preparation. Develop your brain power. That was also very important. Through the initial 25 years, through brahmacharya, practice of brahmacharya. It was not just about conserving sexual energy, but all kinds of energy which are thrown away and turn it towards the higher goals. That's why after Shail Bala, who is the next which comes in the process of further? Yes, brahmacharini. After the energy is awakened in matter, Shail Bala, in matter, there is this divine energy. She awakens. So material man who thought he is only a body, he is twice born. There is the fire of aspiration. Then brahmacharini. Concentrate your energies towards that. Then which comes? Chandraghanta, Kusumanda. You see, it's an entire journey of yoga described. So countless legends. They have described the same truth in many, many ways, different ways. Slight variations here and there. So this was the manifold aspect of Indian life. And just as we talked about gods, there are those energies which don't let us go forward. They hold our leg. Gods are pulling us in the arms. So there is a tussle. So what to do? Whoever will win. Whoever you feed more, that Cherokee legend. Two wolves are fighting, who will win? Whomever you feed more. If you feed the titanic forces inside, the titan will win. If you feed the godlike forces, gods will win. What are these godlike forces and titanic forces? Psychologically, beautifully described in the Gita chapter 16. Devasuri Sampada. Every thought turned around the ego feeds the asura in us. I am great. Today I have earned so much. Tomorrow I will earn so much more. Today I have slain this enemy. Tomorrow I will slay this other. I will enjoy. I will earn. I will give. मैं दानी हूं, मैं ये हूं, वो हूं. दंभ, pride, vanity. All these are wealth of the asura. If we live by that consciousness, the asura will win. On the contrary, who are the gods? Niti, nati, humility, dhriti, steadfastness, teja. So they concentrate them. They don't just throw it away just like that. Shama, forgiving, patient, dhira. So they are very patient in things, persevering. Swadhyaya, regularly they are engaged in studying the self, studying the scriptures, both, so that they get the right knowledge. So these are and many others, there's some 17 of them, attributes of the God. So every time we develop this side, we are taken further. And this battle is typified in countless stories. That's why we'll always see in Indian thought, all the legends, ultimately the battle between the gods and the asura, which takes place at a cosmic level in the subtle dimension, but it takes place also within us. And the ultimate prototypes of that story are Ramayana and the Mahabharata. We'll talk about it probably in the after. So, but just to touch upon it, they are called as itihasas. Itihas, iti, thus, hasa, it has been said. So our idea of itihas was not just newspaper cuttings. Legends were part of the itihas. Why? Because now imagine, they knew that reporters may or may not report. There are killings in Kashmir, reporters will not report. But the Kashmiri Pandits will say, Hamare saath aisa hua tha. Just give you an instance, more recent. So it becomes a part of collective history. Why this is important? Because it has gone into the mind of the race. You can't just deny it. Because a newspaper has not reported, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So itihas, thus it happened, thus it was said. So Ramayana and Mahabharata are itihas.
So what is the story of Kauravas?
Kauravas?
What is the science behind it? That
Kauravas जो एबॉर्शन को बोला था उसकी बात नहीं. हाँ वो दैट्स व्हाट आई मेंट दैट टेस्ट ट्यूब बेबीज हुए थे. आई मीन टेक्नोलॉजी देयर नथिंग अनयूजुअल अबाउट इट. That technology they didn't transmit, thankfully, because we would have had 1,000 Kauravas. But it is something like cloning or test tube babies. It gives always that impression. Not exactly clone. Test tube babies are not exactly clones, but something like that. So they shared. That's why there was only one Kaurava who was different. He was the 101st one. But that was not through Gandhari, it was through a Dasi. Yujutsu, that's right. So this is how, so Ramayana and Mahabharata, they are the itihasas. But they are just, I'll leave with this note, just imagine many lovely novels, fascinating Marvel comics, movies, Harry Potter, सब देख रहे. Doctor Strange भी देखी ली. So, He-Man, Superman comics, all these have come and gone. Okay, now, ठीक है, sometime there is a charm, then it doesn't endure. And who was that? Tolkien. Tolkien की 3 series निकली थी. So, Lord of the Rings, that's right. So there have been many which have come and gone, even in the Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, to an extent. Iliad at least does, and Odyssey, both, they have the aspect of myth. If anything comes closest to this. But just imagine, when did Ramayana, when was it written? When was the actual event which took place, but till date they endure. So, what is there in Ramayana and Mahabharata? That is worth a subject of exploration, but we'll talk about it.
So how do we find that a soul has entered a person or not?
Uh, See, you have to have discovered your soul to know anything about the soul things which are having, including soulmates. Without soul, there is only mate and no soulmate. So, discover the soul, then you can know what is happening in another person's soul. There is no mental way of doing it. But there are some signs that soul enters a child at any age, let's say from age 1 to 14 or womb. And the sign is there is suddenly upsetting of things. It is a completely new element. So I can tell you, say in adolescence, 7, 8, 9, when the soul enters, suddenly you will see children coming up with such wonderful, fantastic thoughts, ideas. You will wonder, ये कहाँ से आ रहा है तुझे? They will start in some way or the other. It will express itself. Sometimes it can take a very fantastic form. As I said in me, it was Devasur Sangram में देवताओं की तरफ से लड़ना है. Now, this is not something which is normal or usual thing. So when that happens, for a moment the entire field of nature goes topsy-turvy. Because there is, and some those new beautiful things begin to, you start taking interest in something which is of a, religious or spiritual nature for some time. Then the mind comes in and says, ये सब बेकार चीज है, इसको पीछे. Mind comes in and pushes the soul behind. But during that period, the soul is very active. And it, for no reason, it connects you to something which represents the divine. आप छोटे से होगे, लेकिन आपको अभी मेरी दीदी बताती, मुझे याद नहीं है, हमारे घर में एक शिव जी का छोटा सा वो था, और मुझे तो याद नहीं है, बोलती तो 2 साल का था, खूब घिसता था, मैं साफ करूँगा, वो गायब ही हो गया घिसते घिसते. सो बट अब मैं क्यों घिसता था? मेरे घर में राम सीता की पूजा होती थी. शिवजी इज ऑलवेज देयर विद रामा. But I just used to take some joy. I don't even remember it because Krishna came and washed away all those things. He said, "वो नहीं है तेरे लिए." So I take it like that. But why was I so attached to Krishna? Nobody told me. So every child, not only about this, I can share because it's happened in my life. But I know people. I know somebody who went to Sri Aurobindo's room. Suddenly that day was flooded with all kinds of thoughts about creation, and came and shared with me. कि ये सब विचार आ रहे थे, फैंटास्टिक. बट देन अगेन द माइंड कम्स इन एंड वेल्स इट. देन यू हैव टू रिकवर इट थ्रू ए लॉन्ग जर्नी. बट व्हेन द सोल एक्चुअली enters, touches, sometimes it could be during an exceptional state like fever and delirium, and suddenly in some way or the other you come in contact with the divine. Some aspect of divinity there is a contact, because soul is the only one which recognizes the divine.
It can enter in the womb also.
Very rare, very rare. Practically nil. Because womb period is like, okay, you buy a plot. So plot आपका हो गया. अभी soul में realize after some time when the baby is born कि ये parents ये तो बहुत, this is not what I want. It's an adventure, no? So it may stay behind. वो plot में राक्षस असुर आ गए, और पता नहीं कौन कौन आगे कब्जा कर लिया, नाम के लिए सोल के नाम से लिखा हुआ है पट्टा. सो एंटरिंग द वूम्ब हैज हैपेंड, बट इट इज वेरी वेरी रेयर.
सर फिर वो जो कहानी है जिसमें वूम्ब के टाइम में ही,
हाँ, लाइक अष्टावक्र एंड दिस. सो as I said, very very rare, but this is some part of the mind, or again that is about ensoulment. A soul which comes from a developed state, somebody like Ashtavakra, it draws, supposing somebody has left the body in this life, who was very developed, X, Mr. X. So, not X-Men, but X. So, वो X क्या कर रहे हैं? हर एक वर्ल्ड में जाके अपने पोर्शंस को डिस्कार्ड कर रहे हैं, because you have to go to the soul world barren and naked. So, but if the mind has been very well integrated in one life around the soul, like Beethoven's hands, mother gives the example, or Swami Vivekananda's thoughts. So when they come back, they can bring that along with them in the womb. That portion is brought into the baby who is still under formation. It's usually something from the thought world, that, Abhimanyu and Ashtavakra story. But it could have been in Ashtavakra's case soul. But usually the soul doesn't enter the womb so soon because उसका एक logical reason है. So why there is no regression from the human form to the animal form? Because form and soul का correspondence है. This is something very interesting to explore. From the form itself, you can get to know a lot of things about a person's inner being. So, जो form होता है वो इतना, if you look at the baby in the womb, what are the forms through which it goes through? It's a worm, it's a fish, it's a turtle. See it? And then it's a beast, and then it's an animal. Soul can and a human. So it cannot enter by its very nature. It cannot support the presence. It'll probably abort. Soul looks like a teeny weeny thing. It's an explosion. Soul entering, in many people it will never enter. About them people say they don't have a soul. They have. But she's watching from behind. Because it's very small, like a little spark. So it watches from behind and the person. Otherwise, if it has a prabhav, then people all will be turned toward truth and good and beautiful. And that is why Indian thought the right way to really make society truly good is to awaken this element. That was the whole logic. In many people, it's because they are not reached in that stage of evolution where the soul can freely express itself. But yet, soul needs the physical contact for its own progress. So in early stages of evolution, what the soul will do? It will watch over this child, absorb its experience, but many times it will never bind itself to the body.
So one different question. Schizophrenia में, when they say कि हमें आवाजें सुनाई देती हैं, we tend to curb it through either counseling or through medication. What is the...
They enter in schizophrenia, they enter into alternate worlds. So there are parallel orders of realities, and they enter into these orders of reality where for them it is real. Same thing with psychosis of different kinds. So what happens is these forces start taking hold of the human consciousness. So they can manifest as thoughts which are abnormal, which create undue fear, suspiciousness, which can lead to ultimately towards despair, suicide, or you can hear it as voices. You start believing a lie as truth and truth as lie. So they take the whole mind captive in its net. So voices and visions can also come in schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is of course an extreme disorder where the full-blown expression of the dark subtle worlds have taken hold of the human consciousness. In many cases the soul leaves and goes away. So only a body is left like a shell, and that's why it's very difficult to connect with them or try to give some kind of thing that prayer karo, ya music laga do mother ka. They will not. I have seen cases where I have told them, "Acha, just put the music on 0 volume, but put it so the vibrations go." But they get to know, they just stop it because the force which occupies will not allow it. So you can see it that that's the ultimate, full-fledged hostile force. So there is regression. It makes the consciousness regress to animal stage where there is no sense of dress and all this is lost. Further stage, stone-like stage, animal behavior, blurting out things, undue anger, and finally at some point the soul tends to leave because the body is now cannot be used for progress. But the shell with the vital being occupying it can continue for years, and that is very tragic situation to be in. Though good to know that the soul has left. The person whom you loved as your whatever has gone. Soul cannot stay in that kind of a mess.
So what about autism?
Autism is different. Autism is at early stages of development when there are gaps in consciousness. So certain parts of nature, they are not able to develop or express themselves. But schizophrenia and psychosis is of that kind.
So when you say soul, it means psychic being is different.
Huh?
Soul is psychic being, soul और psychic being एक साथ enter.
नहीं अलग मतलब वो soul is a generic term. Psychic being is when the soul has developed fully and put on its own personality, it has become a psychic being. I've given a number of talks on this, many of these questions. So you can just go on Auroma, just because someone was also asking. Auroma, AUROMAA.org. And on the YouTube channel, you just have to put the keyword. Auroma YouTube channel also is there. You just have to type the keyword like psychic being. You'll see a number of talks. In great detail, all this has been discussed. Okay? ठीक है.